Welcome to God Friday Discussions. As we embark on this journey together, it's important to acknowledge the diversity of thoughts, beliefs, and experiences that each of us brings to the table. Our discussions are rooted in a spirit of exploration, learning, and mutual respect. The views expressed are those of the individual participants and are presented for the purpose of open dialogue and personal reflection. Please note, we recognize and honor the freedom of personal belief. This platform does not advocate for any singular viewpoint as the absolute authority on spiritual matters. Our discussions are intended as a safe space for sharing and growth. We encourage you to approach each session with an open heart and mind, but also respect your personal boundaries. If at any point you find the content not to your liking or comfort, you're free to disengage as you see fit. While we seek to provide enriching content, participation is entirely voluntary. We assume no responsibility for any personal decisions or interpretations made in response to our discussions. Our aim is to foster a community where curiosity, faith, and understanding can flourish. Thank you for joining us on this journey. And so for today's topic, we're going to get into honesty, and which is, I think, in my opinion, like I really value honesty. I think it's like there's like even with getting jobs and going to school and stuff, there's a lot of dishonest behavior that happens. Like, I mean, of course, you have your cheating. Everyone's probably using ChatGPT to do their homework or something. And in jobs, like people, you know, embellish their resumes and stuff like that. So there's a lot of aspects of dishonesty that are existing in today's society. And I don't know exactly what we're going to get into, but those are just some of my thoughts off the top of my head. So, yeah, if anyone has any first thoughts on honesty, let's dive in.
So who wants to go? I think it's on mute, Matt.
Oh, sorry. I said, yeah. By the way, go ahead, Mohammed. I watched I watched half of it, the video you put out, the one you sent earlier. It was
Mm-hmm.
good, man. It was good. Interesting. Just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah,
Sorry, man. I know it had nothing to do with the topic,
yeah.
but go ahead,
Well,
man.
thank you.
You could go first.
Okay, yeah. I mean, Sheraj was discussing, was talking about earlier about finding God, and I think one of the surest ways um of approaching that is by being honest with yourself first of all. You know, because there's no development uh, the because finding God, let's equate it to self-development. Okay, so let's say Siraj was an atheist, or and he was convinced about his atheism, as an example. Okay, but then suddenly things happen in his life that seems to undermine that ideology, so you wouldn't be able to red flag his errors if he's not able to be honest with himself, first of all. you know I think honesty in a way is a prerequisite for finding some sort of guidance, and also to develop personally, as a human being. Because if you can't be honest with yourself, first of all, you can't learn from your mistakes, you can't rectify, self-correct, you know and then you can't grow. So I think that's why I believe honesty is an important topic in religion, especially because religion is about God, hopefully, and in order to grow nearer to God and to faith, you have to be able to admit where you go wrong, and that requires you to be honest with yourself first of all. So yeah, that's what I think is where I leave it off. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said, and I'll take it even a step further, right? As far as Christianity, and I'm sure Islam, as well as Judaism, whatever. When you die, you're standing at judgment, right? We believe that you're judged, and you're judged.
Hmm.
You got to give an account for what it is that you did, and even what it is you didn't do. But that's another story. So when you're at court in the actual physical world that we live in, you can finagle your way through a judge, and you could deny what your true intentions were and convince somebody that you're, well, this is what I was actually meant to do, right? But when you're standing in front of the judge of the universe, you're completely naked. Like, he knows your intentions. He knows exactly what it is that you were thinking, why you were doing what you were doing, why you didn't do what you were supposed to do. So your salvation kind of depends on it in that aspect. Uh, the benefit of Christianity that we believe is we have an advocate, a lawyer for us that's like on our behalf, like, hey man, he's jacked up, but I covered him, like, you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
in that aspect, yeah, you still got to give an account for what you did, and if you're not honest, God already knows. Like, he knows exactly what your intentions were. You can't deny it. There's no judge, there's no jury. It's him, it's you, and you're completely naked, everything. So yeah, so 100%. Like, when you're, I mean, your salvation depends on it. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Good
What do you think,
points.
Raj?
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a very good a take, to bring in the day of judgment and the fact that you can't hide away from God, your intentions. And so if you know that you can't hide your intentions away from God, why do you want to hide it away from yourself? I think a lot of dishonesty actually starts with the self, your relationship with yourself. Um, is where dishonesty starts, and your integrity, in a sense, it's broken and misaligned, your self integrity, through being dishonest with yourself. And then that in turn impacts how you negotiate your world or the world around you. You know,
Hmm.
people often who lie a lot, um, it's because their constitution is broken. They with themselves, the integrity with themselves is broken, and sometimes they can't even see that they're lying anymore. You know, it's just second nature. It's just so natural to them that the lie becomes the truth. And that's sort of when it's the most dangerous. Yeah, for themselves actually, and for others around them. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it opens up gates. Uh, Sometimes you think like a white lie, like we call it, like you're not harming anything, no harm, no foul. But I just think it opens up the floodgates for something bigger and bigger and bigger, and eventually, like, you're lying to cover up another lie, you're lying to cover up another lie, and like Mohammad brought up at the beginning, you're not. It's all about self improvement. Like, how can you improve spiritually if you're lying to yourself? Lying to yourself, like, this would resonate with you, Raj. Lying to yourself is you're lying to God. He knows. He knows everything. Like, there's no hiding anything from the creator of the universe. So if you're not honest with yourself about where you're at in your walk with your spirituality, or where you're at uh, in general, yeah, you're essentially lying to God, I guess, is the easiest way I can explain it.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I would like, and I could maybe think of a tangible way to think about it too, is like, for me, smoking has been kind of a challenge for me, or not smoking. And I will, um, I will justify my smoking by saying, okay, well, let me seek God while I smoke. And, but at the same time, like, so in my mind, that's pretty legitimate. But at the same time, there's an aspect of me that knows that smoking is not the way to feel better or, um, you know, it's not really the right path, but I'll do it anyway. And I think there's maybe a misalignment there that actually affects a lot of other things that I don't even think about. And um, yeah, it's just, and then even when I do smoke and I attempt to seek God, there's an aspect of that that kind of takes me out of the ability to seek God because I'm like maybe a little weaker in that connection or I'm a little more distracted when I try and do that or something like that. So, um, yeah, there's and like I think yes, yeah, what Muhammad was saying about you're kind of stopping your own learning process. Um, I think like I feel there's a there's truth there because if I continually smoke and try to justify it by saying, okay, I'm seeking God, there's um there's like an element of that that's not learning from not smoking kind of. So like
Mhm.
when I choose not to smoke and then I seek God, it's it's a little more uncomfortable, but I think there's more of a learning experience that goes on there. So, yeah.
Well, it's to kind of dive add on to what you're talking about too, like growing in your spirituality, it should be uncomfortable, like really uncomfortable. Um, if it's not uncomfortable, I'd be concerned with whatever spirituality you're seeking because a lot of it is dying to yourself. Um, and maybe a way that Muhammad understands it, submission, right? So same thing. We're saying the same thing. So becoming, if you're not really out of your comfort zone, I would say you're really not growing spiritual in your spiritual
Mhm.
walk.
Yeah, yeah, I
Yeah, and
think
then
being
since
uncomfortable.
we also kind of we equated in the past in the previous video, um we discussed a little bit about how everything is created in a sense on the same pattern because God created everything in truth. I mean, the same thing applies to almost everything you do in life. When you go to the gym, if you don't leave your comfort zone, you won't see results, right? You're not gonna get you're not gonna grow bigger. If your goal is to grow bigger, but you're not gonna lift heavier weights, you're gonna hit the wall, right? You're gonna get stuck. You're gonna get stuck where you are because even if you go train every day or every other day, but you're not lifting heavier, guess
Yeah,
what? You're not gonna grow because
yeah.
you haven't pushed yourself, you pushed yourself,
It,
you know.
it should
So
be
I think with
painful.
spiritual religion, it's exactly the same thing, you know.
Yeah,
You gotta take yourself to the next level, you know, all the time. Yeah.
And
yeah. So
I
like
think
what you're
that,
saying, Raj, about
yeah.
I'm sorry, Raj. Well, so like what
Well,
you're saying about
yeah.
struggling with what it is you're struggling. Are we on a delay, bro?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Go for it, go for it.
No, no, I was just saying about how you're struggling with it, man. Like, to kind of like really emphasize on what Muhammad just said. Your spiritual walk should be painful, like it should be. Uh, it should hurt, like it should hurt. Like if it's not hurting you, I would. I mean, not physically. You understand what I'm saying? If you
Yeah,
don't
I
feel
think of
like
it like the
pain,
edification idea that I kind of brought up.
yes, yep. Go ahead, Raj. I'm sorry I interrupted you, man.
Yeah, no, I think and I think there's like kind of levels to it too, because you can make yourself super uncomfortable, but then you're not really going to get results from that either because you're kind of you're batting out of your league or something, right? You're kind of overdoing it, but there's like a there's a sweet spot maybe where a sweet spot of uncomfortable feeling that you get the best results from. Like, so when I'm going to the gym or something, like, and the weight is it's like too light, I can feel like, oh, you know what, this is a little too easy. Let me add some more weight on here so I can actually feel that resistance. And it's not like I'm putting in so much weight that I'm gonna hurt myself. And yeah, I think maybe that's part of the growth process is to find that like sweet spot of uncomfortableness that you're actually growing rather than doing damage.
I
Yeah.
think as you grow in it more and more, your resistance tolerance become higher, right? So yeah,
Hmm.
you're 100% right. If you're brand new to your spiritual walk, you don't want to, go too hard on it. You could deter yourself and just turn away from your spiritual walk. You can't give a newborn solid food, right? You got to start with baby food. So, uh, but as you grow in it more and more, if you're not experiencing pain, I would be worried. I would, whatever it is you're doing, I would seek more because uh, I just my understanding is like Mohammad said. I heard that analogy from one of my pastors in the past was about lifting weights exactly. So if you don't have any resistance, your muscles won't grow, and as they grow bigger and bigger, you gotta to grow more. You got to go even harder. So that
I
pain
would
is going to be harder.
I
So
would
that
push
effort is going to be harder.
I would push back against the idea of pain though, because um like I think that's kind of a matter of because when you say pain, it almost causes fear with the idea that, oh, I have to do this painful thing. But it should like I think fear, like when we talk about the whole moving to and moving away from God, I think fear pulls you away from God. But then if you think of I think discomfort is a better word for it than pain because you can still experience that. I think, yeah, like when you experience pain, it's actually you kind of more on the human level. But if you kind of are seeking God through that pain, it changes the pain. So yeah, it's still uncomfortable, but it's not like painful necessarily. I don't know if that makes sense.
I think it's one of them
Yeah,
examples
I
again.
guess.
Man, we gotta
Can
we
you
gotta
guys hear
work on
me?
this.
Yeah, yeah, I
We
can hear
gotta
you.
really work on it.
Yeah, no, it's hard because
Yeah,
there's
Sorry.
yeah, no,
delay and
I
then
guess look, I guess the thing about the pain is that you get a good kind of pain, you know? You know
hmm
that muscle stiffness you get when you start going to the gym, and you can't get up in the morning, but you feel really good about it,
yeah,
you know?
yeah,
So it's the progressive, there's the pain of progress,
Hmm.
yes,
there's a hard day's labor and then feeling the pain,
Yeah.
it's a satisfying pain in a way. So I guess that's also a good a good type of pain. You know,
Yep.
it's different to the pain that you feel when someone punched you up. That's a bad kind of pain. You know,
yeah, yeah,
it still is pain, and so it really depends on the perspective that you put on it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean,
for sure.
another example could be childbirth. Childbirth, something none of us go through, but what women
Thank
report
God.
that
Thank
it's
God.
excruciating. You know, it's very very painful, but yet they do it again and again because they want the joy of having um a baby. And so um there's always unfortunately the nature of existence is that pain and pleasure go together.
Yep.
You could say that pain and success in a way go together. Nobody
Yep.
just became successful. They had to put in the time. But I mean, to bring that back to honesty, to the idea of honesty, um, is that when you are honest with people, and or people are free to be honest with you, you're gonna experience a lot of pain as your misalignments start to line up again, right? So the more in accordance you are with truth, the more you'll be able to take a punch in a way. You know, it's like a boxer, right? The more he trains, the more capable he is of taking a punch. You know, so if you equate this punch with truth, and honesty, the more you are in alignment with truth, the less likely you will be offended by people's punches. You know, when they say to you, you know
Hmm.
what, Sheraj, your thing is really shit, man. Right? I mean, that's like an honest opinion of somebody, you know, and you look at it and you be like, huh, I noticed that it's kind of skew over here, or kind of, I mean, it could actually help you improve by having. I always say that an honest friend is much better, or an honest enemy is better to have around than a nice friend, because at least he'll contribute to your existence, where
Yeah.
somebody that's always just going to tell you, you know what, good job, good job, good job, even though, it's going to become like you're living in your own echo chamber. Finally, when you take your thing out into the world, you'll realize that actually your thing is like the worst of everyone, but it's because somebody's been patting you on your back your whole life and telling you how wonderful you are, you know so so there's that aspect also, yeah.
Well, like the honesty aspect of keeping it on topic with that also. In in our today's society, right? It's not acceptable to be honest with people. That's why we see Lizzo. You know what I mean? You see a woman. Not that there's anything wrong with her figure, but it's not healthy. Obviously, right? Like that's not attractive. But telling someone like that it's not attractive, now you become the villain. You know. And we
Yeah, you
see as a
fat
result.
shaming her or something like
Yes,
that, right?
yes, and
Because you
as a
can't say,
result,
oh, you know what, you are overweight, you clinically
yes,
overweight.
yes,
Yeah.
and it's not
Mhm.
healthy for you. You know, it could lead to diabetes. It could
Mhm.
lead to all these other blood diseases that are clearly linked to obesity, right? And as a result, we see younger kids following suit with this. So it actually hurts the world as a whole. Um,
Mhm.
and I don't know how controversial we're getting, but if you tell a person, no, you're not a woman, you're a man, you're
Mhm.
you're 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 the villain. Um,
Mhm.
and we see as a result, we have this delusion in society that people can just say they are anything that they want to be, and there's no end
Mhm.
to the argument now. So the truth
Mhm.
actually, like Muhammad said, that the truth hurts, and it's easy to tell somebody, "Hey, good job," or like, "Hey, yeah, you're a beautiful woman," or like, "Hey, yeah, you're really attractive," and then they walk around and they're happy, not even realizing it could lead to their self destruction. Uh,
Mhm. Mhm.
a woman like Lizzo, 10, 15 years from now, she's going to have back problems. She's going to have blood problems. She's going to have diabetes. She's going to have all these issues. And because nobody was honest with her to begin with, uh,
Mhm.
we led to that.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, man, yeah, it's some really interesting um that's a very interesting point of view, and I think I would largely agree with that. I think one thing I would say though is like the turn the other cheek uh reference kind of comes to mind. Like if you see someone who's like super fat or something, it's not really, I don't know, being honest with them and saying, "Hey, you're fat," like that doesn't ring to me like an appropriate thing to do. But then,
No, no, no. But hold on.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, not yeah, because that can be insulting, man. But
right,
telling
right.
them like, hey, you're overweight, like it could lead to like medical. This can lead to like some serious issues. and it's not good to be like this. You know, this shouldn't be something we're admiring. Uh,
Right, right, right.
Being
Like, and
unhealthy
that's
is
more of a
not.
cultural thing
So yeah,
than
telling somebody they're fat is not good.
right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, I think yeah, so maybe what you're saying is like our society or maybe the media even is trying to make everything like being fat or something, they're trying to make that okay and maybe accept people like accepting themselves for that. But the thing about being fat is like that's something you have control over through your diet and your exercise. It's not like something like being brown or something, because I can't really change being, well, I don't know. Yeah, you can't really change being
Well,
brown.
Michael
He
Jackson
did,
could do
yeah.
it.
I don't know how he did that.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah. I think that's a very good point. And I think yeah, there's
Well, I
also
mean,
an
we can.
there's also an aspect of like I think what you said, Mohammed, was very um, important too about having friends who are just trying to be nice and they don't actually they're not actually honest with you. They just say the things you want to hear, and that actually in the long run that's kind of not being that's being less nice because it's essentially being dishonest with your friends because you don't want to make them feel bad. And yeah, I
Well,
don't
so here,
think
let
yeah,
me
yeah.
give an example. Let me give an example, right? Because from a religious standpoint, a theological standpoint, whatever we want to call it, and I'm sure myself and Mohammed can agree on this issue. Like, there's certain things that you can do that your salvation depends on. Like, for example, there's this notion now in the United States that people are genetically predisposed to homosexuality, right? And that's probably a real thing, okay? Maybe it's a real thing. But there's also uh, a theory that people are genetically predisposed to alcoholism, right? So if you see your friend just drunk on the ground, oh, it's okay, it's in his genes. Like leave him alone. He was born that way, you know. No, like your life depends on it. Your salvation depends on it. Like so, when you're dishonest with people, you're from a I'll just speak on my behalf. I'll let Mohammed probably speak on his behalf. But from a Christian perspective, you're not helping that person, you know, by supporting and condoning behavior that could lead to their demise. You know what I mean? And as a result, we normalize these behaviors. And in my opinion, we see like the degradation and the just of the social the United States in general is what I want to speak on behalf because I don't live in other countries, obviously, and I know you don't fully agree with me on that, Raj. Just from my perspective, you know, that the destruction of the nuclear home, the destruction of the patriarchy, we could see how we're falling behind the curve now. So yeah, just there's so much that dishonesty affects that we don't even take into consideration, man.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, yeah, I definitely hear you. I'm sure that Sheraj wants to post this video on YouTube. So I'm not gonna be going after the homosexuals. Um, I'll just, I'll just leave it at that. At that, I like how you switched to the example of the drunkard rather, that was smart. But you know, I think the same principle applies in essence. Of course, I mean, I think it's common knowledge that both in Christianity and Islam, um, homosexuality is frowned upon as being incorrect. But I'm not gonna delve into it with any sort of analogy or anything um, regarding the topic of honesty and truth, because it's obviously globally a very sensitive issue at the moment. So
Hmm.
we'll that as an example. But where I do think there's a problem in the inverting of narratives, I think that is more the issue. Where we take things that are anomalies, or let's say on the fringes, and sort of make it mainstream and say that it's equivalent. So, for example, if you say that being a transgendered person is as relevant to society as being a man or being a woman, the fact of the matter is it's simply not, because the majority of people are either men or women. If you were to accept uh, some other category of person, so I think there is a sort of dishonesty in um, creating a mainstream for a thing which is not mainstream. Let's put it that way, in the very least. Um, I mean, throughout history, there were always people who were different, you know, and I do think that society can accept differences, but it needs to be recognized that that's not the normative constructs in society. I guess that's how I would put it. So, for example, hermaphrodites or people with two sexual organs, etc. These are medical anomalies. These are not people are not generally born that way. You know, so while we can acknowledge that, and I would say that where it is really a medical condition, there shouldn't be any discrimination against it. We can't propel it to the forefront as if it is the mainstream or the equivalent to the normative things of society. That's
Let
where
me,
I would
so I'm gonna
sort
push
of.
back against that, and with an interesting thing I learned
Yeah.
about jet design. So
Okay.
when they made the jet, like, like a fighter jet, they made it for the average person. But this actually made it so there were very few pilots because every pilot was like a little different, and some pilots wouldn't be able to fit in very well or something like that. And so they started
Mm-hmm.
designing jets to the extremes. And when they started doing that, they had like things be adjustable and stuff like that. So then you'd have more pilots that are able to fly. And so maybe I
Mm-hmm.
would push back against it like, okay, transgender people, there's people who come out, uh, I don't know, like, with mixed body parts or something interesting. And so, yes, like they're not like a large part of the population, but if you design society to accommodate that, I think you actually get a better society that fits better for everyone, maybe. Just yeah. Challenge there.
Um, you see, I don't disagree with that in principle, but I also feel there's almost like an active promotion where people then feel encouraged to be something different.
Well,
You understand what I'm saying? So,
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
so
yes.
There's like
now,
almost
for
a weird
example, if I
promotion
grew
of
up,
it.
if I just grew up, yeah, yeah, because if I grew up, like, let's say I grew up 100 years ago, and I have a penis and I grow a beard or whatnot, and I'll just say, okay, I'm a boy, I'm a guy. You understand? That would be like the normative accepted thing, right? But now I maybe don't like my dad because he gave me one or two hidings too much or whatever, and I take a dislike to masculinity, and I start saying to myself, well, maybe I'm this or maybe I'm that, or I would that wouldn't have happened in the past because there wasn't this. So I think there's going to be a whole host of people who are basically psychologically scarred for misgendering themselves in a sense through this false belief that gender is a construct. It's not
Well, can I
biologically rooted. Yeah.
Yeah.
let me add into that as well, right? So, for example, I, I would have to agree with what Mohammed was talking about. Is we're mainstreaming like this construct that's not a norm, and I'm gonna go a little further and even call it like a delusion, right? And for example, if I said, "Hey, I've always felt that I was a paraplegic," and I just went and jumped off a building and broke my neck. you would think there was something wrong with me. Or if I said, hey, I've always felt like I related to somebody who had one arm. I just cut my arm off. You throw me in a loony home. But now we're allowing children to cut off their genitals, right? And by not being honest with children, by not explaining to kids that biologically this is what you are, regardless of how you feel of what you are, biologically this is what you are. And as a result, for boys, for example, I got a strong theory on this, but I'm not going to dive into here. But for a boy, if you cut off your genitals at a young age, let's just say pre-puberty, like you're still a toddler, which we're seeing that. We're seeing examples of that here in the States where they're allowing 6-year-olds and even lower to transition, they call it. That boy now loses the capacity to climax. So you have a man that has all this built up sexual frustration, sexual tension in him, and he has no way to ever release it. And what do we think will happen as a result of that? Like, you know what I mean? Um, I feel like lying, like this is 100% a good topic on dishonesty, like or being honest. Like when we tell this to the children, like we're setting the world up for, I don't know, we'll see what happens. I guess just my opinion, but we're setting the world up for uh,
Disaster,
things that aren't
really.
normal. Yeah,
A lot of
things that aren't normal,
confusion.
like confusion, and confusion is like from the devil.
And the fact of the matter is, confusion, life is already complicated by itself. You know,
Yeah, ain't
even when
that
we
the
just
truth?
only had two genders and there were men and women and people got married and had families, still life is complicated. You know, people are grappling with things in their lives already while taking for granted other things that they thought was just a standard narrative, yes and no, black and white, etc. You know, but when we blur the black and white things of yesterday and everything becomes variable, it results in a very difficult, puts people in a very difficult space because now they can no longer take anything for granted. So much time is wasted because everything is up for negotiation, like everything, you know. I mean, when you're 6 years old and you got to think about whether you're a guy or a girl, you got to negotiate your gender, you know, at 6. And
Well,
then,
you you
you know, I
you're
mean,
competing for your identity. Like you don't know your identity yet. And as a
you don't know who
we
you
we,
are. Yes, exactly.
we can
And I
all
You
think,
don't
totally
know who
relate
you
to
are.
this.
And then,
and I
yes.
think that, like the whole idea of being a guy and a girl can be confused with masculine and feminine energy. Because like, there's guys out there with a lot of feminine energy. Like I probably have a lot of feminine energy, and
Come
but
on, bro.
that doesn't mean I'm a girl. And um,
Hmm.
it's yeah, and it's okay to have different levels of masculine and feminine energy in each of us. And
Hmm. Hmm.
um, I think like accepting accepting your masculine or feminine energy or the balance of the two is important, but you don't have to change your, and I think it's getting maybe a little confused with, oh, I feel like a lot of feminine energy in myself, so maybe I'm a girl. And I think that's like maybe the extreme people are taking that maybe a little questionable.
I
Well,
think.
also it's kind of hypocritical because when you say that I feel like I have a lot of feminine energy in me, maybe I'm a girl, you have already isolated what you believe is a gender in to begin with. So it's circular logic. You understand? Because that means you have something in mind which you think is feminine and a girl, which means you've already isolated a gender because you saying girls behave like this and guys behave like that, which is anti liberal ideology in the first place to begin with.
Right, right.
Because you should be able to get a girl who behaves like a guy and still be a girl. You should be able to get a
Hmm.
girl who's a mechanic pulling out engines with a haircut, wearing boots, and a proper like dyke type girl, and she should still be a girl. If she wants to call herself a girl, I mean, because she's got a vagina and she calls herself a girl, right? That that used to be what they were going going for in the past. You know what I'm saying? So now they created like a proto girl and a prototype guy, and saying, oh, maybe she has a masculine energy and she should have grown a dick instead.
Hmm.
You know, instead of being uh, a proud woman that happens to like masculine things, because there's nothing wrong with that. You know. Um, and then it puts into question the fact that in the beginning they were questioning whether you should ever classify attitudes and behaviors as masculine and or feminine to begin with. So it's just
That,
it's just all like the arguments don't flow from each other. They don't make sense in the end,
yeah,
you
that's
know?
some good logic
Yeah,
right there, bro.
I've heard the yeah
Yeah.
I've heard these arguments that when young children describe themselves, like it's interesting you put that up, Raj, about having feminine energy. Uh, they feel that they're not what they are because maybe they have this perception of what a man is, and they think it's just pure masculinity. And there are men out there that are overly masculine. There are men out there that are equally balanced. There are men out there that are more on the feminine side. But you're still a man. Um, and by no, so when we're dishonest with people, and we got kids cutting their genitals off. Sorry, that it just boggles my mind. I feel like we're in the twilight zone sometimes when I talk about this. I just can't understand how we allow a kid that can't really even decide their bedtime. If you ask them what they want to eat for dinner, they're probably going to tell you marshmallow fluff. A kid that can't dress themselves, we're allowing them to. This is what happens when we're dishonest, I believe. So honesty leads to like the destruction of mankind, in my opinion.
So
Dishonesty,
let
I
me
would say.
throw a little
I mean,
wrench in here. Um, because I always like bringing up the analogy of the yin and yang. So well, let's say the white part is honesty and the black part's dishonesty. And I wonder if we can think of a pot like when people are essentially lying about their gender. I wonder if there's um positive angle on that that is maybe that we can find, I wonder.
um,
One thing I think of is
I'd like to hear
freedom.
it.
It's kind of like it's kind of like the ultimate freedom to be able to change your gender if you want to, which is kind of interesting take on it.
Well, yeah, it is kind of freeing to be able to self-identify as anything. I mean, I mean, you could just self-identify as a tree, and for this week, I would want everyone to call me tree, and next week I'd want everyone to call me plane, and I can just basically
Yeah.
force everyone to go along with
Yes.
my narrative, or tell them they're just not
Yes.
respecting my
Hmm.
self-identification. I mean, and there
Hmm.
is obviously some sort of in a weird way, there must be some sort of liberation in that. I
Yeah.
mean, if it was like a mental case, I would totally enjoy it. I mean,
Can I? Can I?
I'll go to work tomorrow and I'll be like, okay, well, guys, today I'm not Dr. Mohammed, I'm Bottle Mohammed. I want everyone to
Mm.
call me Bottle Mohammed from this day. And next week I'll come in and I'll say, well, now I want you to call me, you know,
And
whatever I
and
want.
we.
Right? So it's liberating because in a way, it's a manipulation. You know, I'm getting to force everyone, I'm manipulating everyone around me to use the terminology I want them to use. And
Well,
I'm sure there's a
I
sense
think
of
that's I think that's part of the issue with
power
a
in
lot
that.
of sorry. Yeah,
Go
I
ahead,
feel like
Raj.
that's a big issue with the whole that's where the um the rubber meets the road in terms of like problems with that is because you can't force other people to call you what you want. It's really like that's and I think that's a big part of Jordan Peterson's point is of with all this stuff is like how people are trying to put that into law or something like, oh, you have to call someone by how they want to be
They
called.
have actually, they have,
Or
yeah.
yeah, and I think
You can't you need to ask people what their pronoun is before you address them.
yeah, so you're
In
kind
some
of
parts of
taking
the world,
away
you gotta say,
other
okay, what
people's
is the preferred
freedom.
pronoun, and then
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, you're kind of
So
taking
if
away other
you
people's freedom
identify
for
as
your
them,
own freedom.
yeah.
Sorry.
Yes.
So Sheraj, if you identify as them, I'll have to call you them from now on.
Right.
The pronoun
You
every
know,
time I
and
hear it. So you can't
Mohammed,
even follow the rules of English grammar anymore. You know?
what Mohammed,
Yeah.
as you were going through these examples, right? It
Yeah.
was interesting because um, it sounds ridiculous what you're saying, right? I identify
Mm.
as bottle. I identify as a cell phone. I identify. So we all understand that these aren't reality, and it's comical.
Mhm.
But reality is being skewed, and we're normalizing it. So
Mhm.
you can't say. Let's just say what has more bearing in this discussion right now. What has more bearing? Your how do I put this? Who you are as a human or your racial identity? Which one has more
Mhm.
bearing?
Mhm.
But we'll sit here and we'll tell people you can't. What's her name? That one woman, Rachel Dolezal, who was the head of the NAACP, a white woman.
Mhm.
Nobody knew it. She painted her skin. She put on blackface essentially, and that was the most offensive thing anybody could do. Because how dare her say she was black and she wasn't black? If anything, racial identity is more of a social construct than your sexual. Uh,
Yes, exactly, exactly. I mean,
but
I had the
but
same
we
problem, and I had exactly the same problem in South Africa because in South Africa they have what they call Black economic empowerment, and so I decided I'm gonna self-identify as Black because I want to get a job, right? And then I went to the HR like for an interview, human resources, and she started reading my application and says, yeah, you're Black. I said, yeah, I'm Black. And then she's like, no, you're not. I'm like, you can't tell me what I am because there's no legal definition of what it means to legally be Black in South Africa.
Hmm.
You understand? So I said, you
yeah.
can't tell me that I'm not Black if I say I'm Black, you know? So you're absolutely right. I mean, because think these are laughable, these kinds of definitions anyway. So I'm gonna play around with it. I'm not gonna take it seriously, you know. But I mean, now if I want a job, I'm gonna identify as a woman because there's Black economic empowerment and gender equity, right? So I'll identify in South Africa as a Black woman, and now in South Africa they can't tell me that I'm not a Black woman because I'll
Yeah.
sit there and say, am a Black woman, and you cannot tell me that I'm not a Black woman because
Well,
I have
so
self identified as such, you know?
yeah. When we're dishonest,
That's
we
hilarious you did that,
exactly
bro.
reeling it back in.
That's
It's true.
Yeah, that was really good, Mohammed.
Yeah.
When we were dishonest, we could see how it just leads to confusion, right? So we got to a point. There was no time in society, probably prior to maybe the 1950s, that your sexual orientation was your identity. Um, it's just literally what it is. It's your sexual orientation. It's not who you are. It's what you prefer, right? But we've gotten to a point that we put so much emphasis on these matters that if we were just in alignment with God's morals to begin with, we wouldn't be in this position at all. So by being dishonest with people and not telling them the truth in love, Raj, in love, right? Not like, hey, you're fat. Or Raj, you look really dumb with that haircut, right? No, you don't, Raj. I'm just making that up. But like, like not being truthful to people in love, we lead to this confusion, and confusion is from the enemy. So we can just see that the whole world is confused, and we're imagine as a think everybody can relate to this. Back when you were adolescent teen, think about how you struggled with your identity. You were constantly trying to just fit in with whatever crowd would accept you, right? And now throw in that you actually don't even know your actual sexual identity. I mean, your biological identity. And imagine how much more confusing that is. And we can't see why the suicide rate is exploding. We can't see why depression is like at its all-time high. Well, no, here, just take a pill, you feel better. So as a result of being not being honest with people, we could see it leads to this exactly as we're describing, and we all kind of see, I think, eye to eye. I don't think Raj disagree with anything we were saying. Maybe he sees it and views it differently, but yeah, just just
I
leads to
mean,
more
on the thing of
confusion.
the thing of sexual orientation, the thing that I like to point out is that you don't see heterosexual people going around and saying, I'm heterosexual, I'm heterosexual. You need to judge me by who I like to fuck. You know? I mean,
Yeah.
the point is, I mean, normal heterosexual people, we have sex in a quiet bedroom where no one can see us. I mean, why can't people who are homosexual just do the same thing?
I think they
Hmm.
do
I
though.
mean,
I think that's
that's how I see
largely
it.
the case. There's
You know?
maybe a few loud ones who don't do that, but
No,
I,
no, you get
yeah,
a lot of homosexual people want to be acknowledged for their preference in who they fuck. And I'm like, why is it anyone's business who you like to fuck?
Yes.
You know what I mean?
sure.
I
Yeah.
mean, look, if you don't make it anyone's business, there's going to be no discrimination against you because nobody cares really,
It's
you know?
weird
So let
though.
me
I
ask this
feel like
question.
people do care because like a lot when like someone's gay or something, it kind of everyone starts talking about it. And I that kind of makes me brings up another point that I was thinking earlier is like I think there's an aspect of wanting to be in a group and connected with other people, so you kind of take take on like if you're lonely or something and you're like, oh, maybe I'm a woman, and then you like join the transgender community where they'll maybe take you in like wholeheartedly. Maybe you're looking for that sort of connection. And I
Yep.
think that's like our societies these days, it's very closed off, very individualistic, not super connected. And I think maybe this whole like homosexuality and transgender stuff is so you can be part of something larger than yourself. It's like that need that's being filled.
Mhm. That's why they got to be loud about it so they can attract like-minded people and form sort of like cliques and feel connected to people who are like them. Yes, I do understand.
Mm.
Yeah,
I
where you're
I
coming from.
I want to be crystal clear though for myself, just because Mohammed brought something up earlier. Just crystal clear to myself. I have no problem with any transgender individual. I have no problem with any homosexual. Like what you do is your business. Like theologically, I don't agree with you, and I'll put that out there. But I don't hate you as a human being. Like
I
I
wanna
could have a relationship with you. I could have a friend. I could have a friendly relationship with you. You know, I don't have anything against you, and I wanted to throw that out there. And yeah,
I wanna
yeah, that's
100% echo that. Like I've worked with um homosexual people or transgender people or whatever. I even so I go swing dancing every once in a while, and I even danced with a transgender person. I believe they were transgender, and it was actually like really interesting because they kind of like when you're learning how to dance, um it does help to dance with the same sex as you because uh you kind of learn how it feels to be a woman in a way, and that like and then you can kind of actually do a better job as a man. Yeah, no, it's kind of weird, but I think it's it it's a really it's pretty valuable learning experience, I'd say.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Well,
like
you know
okay, so
the
for me like
kind
specifically for me, like one thing I was for dancing, it's I wasn't like dancing like strong or like being super not forceful, but like kind of assertive with movements. And then when I kind of learned like, oh, it's actually it helps confuse the woman less when you're more assertive with movements. If you're trying to be super gentle and you're like,
Mhm.
"Oh, I don't want to like push you this way or that way,"
Yeah,
it's actually more confusing for the woman to dance with the man. So that's like an important thing I learned through that experience.
but that's also an important lesson in life. I think also even in marriage, that is an important lesson. Women feel a lot more secure in a relationship, in a marriage, when they know where the man's boundaries are. Because it makes them feel safe. They know that,
Yes,
look, they don't have to walk on eggshells from point A to point B. They can do whatever they want because they know where the boundaries are. The boundaries are between point A and point B because the man is assertive. He asserts where his boundaries are and what he would like, and she knows that in between that she's good. She's good to go. She can do,
very
she
good.
can feel comfortable
Yeah.
and free in that space. But the minute she steps out of that, she knows, okay, I'm going towards a zone where I'm gonna make this, I'm gonna piss this guy off that I'm with, you know. So it, it's like that in life, and even with your friends when you're dealing with people, just relationships in general. It's nice to know um, where your friends' boundaries are and how to, because you know then how best to deal with them. You know. Um, and also all friends are not equal. So for example, if you have like a staunch Christian friend, for example, like let's say Matt is a staunch Christian friend, you're not going to go tell your gay escapades to him because he just said that theologically I don't agree with it. You get what I'm saying? So you know that, all
Mm-hmm.
right, that's his boundaries, but you're going to talk to another friend maybe about that,
Mm-hmm. You're right.
those ideas are fine. So
But
that's also an important thing about being honest, and upfront with people, so that people have the autonomy to deal with you um, according to how they see fit, because you gave them that autonomy. You know,
yep.
otherwise
You know,
it becomes a manipulation instead of a relationship. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
definitely. Yeah,
yeah.
Well,
that yeah, well said.
so what we see now, right? Getting back into the whole honesty thing and how it leads to exactly what it is that this discussion is about. And I don't want to center it completely around the whole that whole movement, but at these events, these parades that are uh, facilitated in cities all across the states here, we see examples over and over and over again. Just stress again, I have no animosity, anything against any any people. I just don't agree with you, and that's okay. That's why we're here. We don't have to agree with each other. But if a man walked around little girls and he had his genitals sticking out, he would go to jail, and likely he should. He should go to jail, no doubt about it. If there was just a heterosexual man walking around with his genitals out, yeah, send him to jail. Like I don't want my daughter seeing that. Like I want him going to jail. But we see over and over at these pride parades or these parades that women are walking around essentially naked in acts of vulgarity where they're making like sexual gestures over just with each other, and kids are there cheering them on. Like I think these parents, and this is where I could probably get controversial, but I think these parents, I don't know if I should say it, man, but I think these parents should be punished. Like you should not be subjecting your kid to like sexual. I feel there's a grooming going on, and that's just evidence. That's just evidence of my argument. Like we're grooming kids to just be
You see,
sexually immoral.
But how old are the kids
the
who are
thing
going
is,
to these
Matt,
parades? They can't
sexual.
be that old, right? Or I
Now
mean, they
you,
can't be that young,
now you can see. Yes, yes, they are. There's kids sometimes 4 or 5 years old cheering this on as this is going on.
but they're with
You know,
their
if
parents.
you're not, if you're yeah, and if you're a teenager, obviously, like as teenagers, and I wasn't always a Christian, obviously, but we were subjected to seeing naked women Well, back in my day, like it wasn't easily accessible, right? As accessible, but you see naked women and Playboys, things of that nature, magazines and things like that, and that was as far as we got, right? So I get that aspect, but like a 5-year-old subjected to that type of I can't agree with that, man. And that's when we're dishonest. Like this is what it leads to is we're just normalizing this behavior with kids, and we can see like teen pregnancy or early pregnancy, even preteen sometimes just becoming the norm now.
I think, Matt,
I feel
the
like it's
sexual
less normal now than
immorality
before, though.
thing.
Like in the olden days, teen pregnancy was like how everyone got pregnant.
You're
Well,
onto
yeah,
something
back
there.
in
You're
the
onto
day,
something,
teen
Raj.
pregnancy was normal, but people got married young.
Yes,
Yeah.
So it
yes.
wasn't the same like now, because now teen pregnancy is more an issue of being irresponsible, like playing with your toys before Christmas, you know. But
Good analogy.
with now, before teen pregnancy was people got married at 15 and 14, and then they raised their kids, like my grandmother, great grandmother, all of them were married at 15, and that was like normal, and so yeah, that was teen pregnancy, but it wasn't the same, didn't amount to the same thing as it does now. But with the sexual immorality thing, I feel like it kind of works, on a slippery slope kind of a thing, because what happens is, I think sexual immorality starts out small, usually. So you'll see the evolution of sexual immorality in society first starts with heterosexual promiscuity, you know? That's kind of where it starts. So it's adults, consenting adults, but essentially promiscuous sexual communism. So everybody sleeps with everybody. And then that becomes fine. But then that becomes normal. And then people look for a new thing, you know? And then it goes into like open relationships, polyamory. Um, and then it goes into things like pedophilia, you know, and it goes into things like homosexuality.
Deviancy.
So I
Yeah,
think I think
deviant.
it's more of a like, we want more, so we want different, we want to feel better, we want to, because the thing about sexual immorality, I mean, why there's such a thing, I think in religion anyway, is because people are generally very interested in sex, because it's part of what, it has to be a strong drive, because if sex wasn't such a strong drive, we wouldn't be here. So as a species, sex has to be very, like, it has to be a very strong drive to want to have sex. So people are all very sexed anyway, you know. But why there's like checks and balances on sexuality is that so that people can enjoy it responsibly, so that it doesn't damage society by unfettered, um sort of, going down that slippery slope. So one thing leads to the next thing, leads to the next thing, then it leads to bestiality sometimes in some cases, because people get tired, or it gets boring after a while, right? So people who are highly promiscuous, after enough, you know, doing it with all kinds of people, then need to find another way to feel that same sense of it's like drugs, right? You got to take more and more, and then you got to go on
Giddy.
harder drugs and harder drugs. So sex is like that. It's an addiction essentially. It's like a drug, and the
Yeah.
only way to indulge in it responsibly is to indulge in it in a regulated fashion. You know, which is
With your
why
wife.
I think religion has checks and balances on it.
Well,
Marriage and things
so
like that.
so so just from a reproductive standpoint, right? Like you have to have sex for humanity to sustain, right?
Mhm.
There's no way around it. So okay, maybe the act of sex now doesn't have to be committed. You could actually inject, fertilize an egg in a lab and create life with that, right? And then you can have a surrogate. There's other, but nonetheless, it's still the semen from a man and the egg from a woman still have to happen in order for uh, human race to sustain, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't think anybody would argue with that. So that that's the norm. So why are we saying that? Well, that doesn't make it normal. Well, that's how life exists exactly because of that, not because of two men uh, having sexual relations or two women having sexual relations or two individuals who are unsure of what they are having sexual relations. At the end, there still has to be an egg from a man and semen from a, or, sorry, an egg from a woman and semen from a man. So that's as basic as it gets, but we're getting to a point that we're even denying that. We're saying men could have men can give childbirth. Like I don't, I don't know where we're going. When we're dishonest with people, delusion takes over, and we see evidence of this. And it's even offensive to say this is delusion now. Like this is truth. It's not delusion. You can't. Two men could never, ever, under any circumstance, create life. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Two women never under any two biological. It actually bothers me. I got to explain this.
You
I
have
got
to
to
say
use the word
biological, yeah.
biological. Yeah, I got to say biological. Two
Yeah.
biological men and two biological women can never ever create life on their own.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that they can't, raise kids, whatever. Not that I. That's a whole other topic. But we see evidence in humanity that this is the norm. Like this is how humanity sustained throughout all of
Mm-hmm.
humanity, right? All of since the creation, since the inception. Like there's never been any other circumstances except if you're a Christian, or obviously a Muslim that I know about, that the Immaculate Conception, right? Or if you're
Mm-hmm.
Adam, that you were formed from the dirt. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Anything in between those two and after the second one, there's never been any circumstance. So why are we arguing this? Like it's because we're not honest with people because we don't want to hurt their
Mm-hmm.
feelings. So because we don't want to hurt people's feelings, because like you said, Ross, maybe a guy feels that he's got a lot of feminine energy and he didn't have a father that to tell him, hey, that's okay, man, but you're still a man. Like it's okay. You don't have to be this masculine macho man to be a man, but it's also okay if you're a masculine macho man. Like there's nothing wrong with that, you know. Um, yeah. So when we're dishonest with people, it leads, I guess, when I sum it up, to delusion.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I think associating sex with like a drug, I think that's a really interesting and on point. Um, and I think but there's also the fact that like we're all kind of doing drugs all the time, like caffeine and there's all sorts of drugs out there. You don't really think about it as a drug, but it's a drug. And
Mm-hmm.
I think like that and that's a reason why, you have to be a certain age to be able to do drugs, so because you're more ideally more responsible, more able to um
Mm-hmm.
just, you know, take care of yourself and be
Yeah, and
responsible.
you have to be a certain age before you can have sex in a lot of countries, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think like
Because it requires a certain level of responsibility. Yeah.
hmm and I think a key component for this idea of being responsible is being able to um seek God and being like that whole element of honesty and dishonesty to see in yourself like what your best choice is, or what how you're honest with yourself about what you're doing. Like if you're having a lot of sex, if you're able to like be honest with yourself and be like, you know what, this actually is kind of hindering my life or what I want or my relationships, then
Mm-hmm.
that's like kind of the key component that may bring you back into balance with yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because there's a point at which having a lot of sex with a lot of people um, does not foster good relationships because it becomes purely hedonistic. And then there is a sense of which having sex does foster a good relationship. and isn't purely hedonistic because it's coupled with the necessary love and care and emotional connection and all good things is connected with a sense of pair bonding through that act. So something can be good and bad at the same time. It depends on how it's being applied. You
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing in the
Um,
Bible is God's very he's like, yeah, go have sex, like make children. We want life in this
this
world.
was.
So,
Yeah.
isn't it? Isn't that
Go
the
Yep.
forth
case?
and multiply.
Yeah.
Yep. No,
Yeah.
he's very vocal about sex, man. It's like and whatever you do with your wife, it's like, hey man, he's like cheering you on like when you're when you're with your wife, like, yeah, it's my son. You know what I mean? So like yeah, yeah. Um, we all have a void and we try to fill it with things that are insatiable, man. And some people fill it with sex, some people fill it with alcohol, some people fill it with
Smoke.
drugs, some people fill it with smoking. I mean, whatever the case is, all of these things are insatiable, man. You'll never, like Mohammed brought up, like you'll never be satiated if you're just trying to constantly seek that sexual thrill. You always have to find something better, something bigger, right? And the only thing that will satiate your quench you is God. So when we got away from that, we started telling people, oh, the feminist movement, oh yeah, be promiscuous, be like a man. Well, being like a man isn't being promiscuous, and that's something I didn't. I'm beyond in my youth. I was a promiscuous individual, obviously, whatever. But um, you'll never be satiated. You'll never feel that desire. There'll always be a need to seek something more. You'll get your fill and it'll be empty immediately. And
Mhm.
the only thing that will quench your and satiate your every need and desire is uh, being in the presence of God, and in our case, what we believe in as Christians is being in the presence of Jesus as well. So
Mhm. Mhm. I'd like to share with you a verse from the Quran, if I may,
Yeah,
that speaks to this topic. Yeah.
absolutely.
So in chapter 33, verse 70, it says, O believers, be mindful of Allah, which is God in Arabic. Be mindful of Allah and say what is right. He will bless your deeds and forgive your sins. And whoever obeys Allah and His Messenger has truly achieved a great triumph. So here it talks about, speaking the truth, saying what is right. And if you say what is right, then God will bless you and forgive you your sins. And I think that's an important part of reformation because you can't be forgiven for sins if you can't recognize them in the first place. You know, so and your actions can't be made wholesome if you're not able to speak what is right. If you're not prepared to risk it, to say what is right, and to be direct with people in your
yeah,
speech.
yeah,
And because that's actually when you will find development, personal development in yourself, because if you look at people and you say, oh, Sheraj, I notice he's doing this thing and it's really wrong, and then you wait a minute, but I also do that, you know so I mean, but you got to be prepared to make the engagement, to have the conversation, because I think as people we do help each other in that way, you
so
know
yeah. So
because we're not, no man is
there,
an island. Yeah.
yeah. So there's this verse. I can't remember the exact verse. It's in the two of the Gospels, I believe, though, man. It says, "Do not cast your pearls before swine, and do not give to dogs what is holy." So I believe the premise behind it is actually like when you're speaking the truth to somebody, if they're not receptive, then don't even you got to stop. If you find yourself arguing with somebody, you're not making progress. You know, like if say me and you didn't see eye to eye, Raj, and you say you don't. I know, and I feel this is the case. You don't agree with necessarily what either one of the let's just say the Quran or the Bible exactly what they say, I'm not going to sit here and argue with you about it. Like, what progress are we going to make by me trying to convince you? And I think that's what we got to understand is there's a certain point you got to leave it up to God. You can tell people the truth.
Mhm.
I say you can lead a horse to water,
You can't
but
make him
it's up
drink.
to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's up to that individual. So if we all,
Hmm.
well, we see YouTube channels now, the whole YouTube channels are about men and women arguing or people arguing about spirituality. I see it over and over now. I don't know if it's because I've been talking with Mohammad now lately. All these videos are popping up on my feed, but like I see like Muslims and Christians just arguing back and forth, and it's like it's crazy to me because I actually just the other day I had a conversation with an individual. I'll leave nameless, and I'm not able to talk like this with him. And I was telling him, it was the conversations we're having here. Like it's amazing, having a conversation with an actual Muslim where I'm getting something directly from the source, where it's not like some other Christian. Oh no, don't believe in what they're saying, and 95% we're saying exactly the same thing, but we're arguing over some. Obviously, there's some big differences. Like there's a huge dichotomy, but 95% of it is like almost the same. And
Hmm.
we don't need to scream at each other. I think we all agree, like morally, on kind of the same issues. And
Hmm.
I'm not going to sit here and scream at somebody because they. How are you going to save somebody by screaming at them? Like hold on, you don't agree with me? Let me yell at you because I'm gonna get a better result.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, it's not gonna help. Yeah.
yeah. But
And I
I,
Yeah,
I
what
think,
you
see this.
quoted, what you quoted was from Matthew. What you quoted was from Matthew,
Yes.
7, verse 6, and it says, "Do not give dogs what is sacred. Do not throw your pearls to pigs. If you do, they may trample them under their feet and turn and tear you to pieces."
Hmm.
So that is, yeah, that's what you quoted.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, which I mean, which is very true. True wisdom, and um, because yeah, it is senseless giving somebody something that is beyond their ability to appreciate, especially when it's scripture, because you got to treat it with respect, as the word of God. And if you sense that you're in a situation where people will not be able to appreciate it at all and mock it, for example, then why would you want to share it with them?
Hmm.
So yeah,
hmm
yeah.
Well, I see whole entire YouTube channels of people dedicated to. I'm gonna go evangelize at this pride event. Nah, you're
Hmm.
not, dude. Let's be honest, man. You're not trying to evangelize. You're trying to agitate people. You're trying to piss people off, and you're
get
trying to get people
clicks.
to subscribe to your YouTube channel. You don't care
Yeah.
about these people. Like, if you did, you'd just be praying for them nonstop offside of that camera.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're gonna sit here, no, because Jesus Christ sent me to tell the truth. Okay, you're right, he did, but let's revert back to that verse. Do not give to dogs what is holy, and do not cast your pearls before swine. Do not give to dogs what is holy. Right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
they're not going to be receptive to you, and instead you're going to sit there and scream at them. Like that's one of the things when we get back to tell the people the truth in love. And if you tell somebody the truth and they're angry about it and they're to the point that they're screaming about it, that's your time to back away and just pray and give it to God.
Hmm.
And I
Hmm.
think a
You
key
planted the seed.
I think a key part of when like maybe you're debating or arguing with someone is, are you and them both seeking the truth? Because sometimes you just want to defend yourself and you don't want to like your ego
Mm,
gets hurt and you want to defend yourself. But if both people are seeking truth and we're on that same page, then I think you can actually get positive outcomes from an argument because it's more like
Hmm.
a fight in discovery rather than a fight just to fight.
you're
Yeah,
right.
and it doesn't have to necessarily be a fight because, like, last week, for example, I shared with Mattia what we as Muslims believe. I just told him as a point of fact, a matter of fact, this is what we believe, and that's it. You know,
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, you can share your views with people without it having to be a debate.
Hmm.
Because the fact of the matter is, no amount of evangelizing is going to change the fact that that's what I believe, or and vice versa. You know,
Hmm.
so I mean, there's nothing wrong essentially with, I mean, me anyway, as a Muslim, I know there are people who are Christian. It's just a fact. That's is a fact that's not going to change, and that's fine. You know, so so
Mhm.
you know, I mean, the thing, the duty of a Muslim or even a Christian or anyone who believes is to share what they believe. But if God wanted that person to be a Muslim or a Christian or whatever, then He'll bring it into being. He'll force it to happen. But your job is just to share. You know,
Plant that seed is what I
That's-
said. You're planting a seed.
yeah,
We don't have the capacity to change anybody. Actually, we don't. If I'm being frank, we don't really have the capacity to do anything. Sorry,
yes, that's
we
true.
don't have the capacity to do anything outside of God. Like everything
Mhm,
we've done is either from a gift of God or God like put within us. Like God is the creator of creation, right? Like everything.
mhm,
So even the buildings we see, that was created by man, right? So essentially it comes from God. Like
mhm,
everything, nothing happens without God signing it off. So if all of a sudden you're
mhm,
playing God and you're saying, well, I'm
mhm,
going to convince this person, I'm going to save this person. No, you're not. You're not going to save
mhm,
somebody. Only you could,
mhm,
like Muhammad and myself, like we're describing, you could talk to somebody, but biblically it says through your I can't get the exact verbiage, but basically through your acts. Like
mhm,
that's how you'll catch people.
mhm,
Not by how much scripture I can recite, not by um, how well I can debate, not by how well I can defend my religion. Like I
mhm,
see this man right here, and I see a man that like actually, he's a genuine man, a man, uh, good family man, and it's admirable. And that's how you're gonna capture people, not by, oh well, if you do this, you're going to hell. That's not
mhm,
gonna. You're never.
Kind of reminds me
If
of
I
raising
told you,
kids
Raj, hey
too.
man,
Like kids don't won't do as you say, they'll do as you do. That's like a kid raising thing. And
well, to an extent they will. Like sometimes the kids will do the opposite because they saw you. Sometimes the kids, you really, I would say you really can't tell where a kid's gonna go. Like you could be the kid, you could raise a kid to the best of your ability, and they could go completely. You could follow every biblical principle, every scripture
mhm,
principle, every religious principle, and that kid can still deviate, right? Um, you really don't know, but yeah, I don't necessarily do as I say, not as I do, but I don't even have control over my kids. Let's getting back to the whole topic is you have to give everything to God, right?
mhm, mhm,
God's in control, not me. Like I can't.
mhm,
At a certain point, we reached an age, and our parents had to let us go. Your parents no longer have control over you guys, right? They can't say, "Oh, well, I'm gonna do what I feel is just in my eyes or my heart," right? Maybe it's my parents don't agree with it. And
mhm.
I don't know. Maybe I'm getting too personal, but like, were your parents Muslim, like Muhammad?
Yes, my parents were um are Muslim. Yeah, they're still alive.
Got you.
Um, yeah, yeah, yeah.
but mom,
Like,
But
we share the same mom.
we are diverse family.
Yeah,
got you.
yeah. And mom is
So,
a
so your
little
your mother is Muslim.
she's kind of Muslim. She picks and chooses what she likes from the religion kind of, and she kind of goes with that. Yeah.
Mhm,
Yeah,
But
got you.
Fareed is more of a strict
Yeah, yeah,
Muslim, I would say. Or no?
mhm, mhm.
What
yeah,
do you think, Yassine?
yeah.
Yeah.
No, no. Well, so my wife, because I've been having like a lot of discussions with her lately, and it's been because I just been so fascinated with these discussions, man. It's really I might invite a few more people to these discussions sooner than later, but I
Mhm.
was talking to my wife, and I was just like, man, dude, I had this discussion with this Muslim, and it was just like it was amazing, man. Like we just literally like had discussions, and like I was kind of upset because you hear this narrative in like a lot of the churches that I go to, and that Allah is not God. And I was
Mhm.
like, I didn't understand, what. Okay, but then he explained Allah just literally means God in Arabic, right? And like,
Mhm.
Muslims believe in the same God that created Adam and Eve. They believe in the same prophets. They believe in Jesus. So I'm like,
Mhm.
I think our view of how we view God is different, but I think it's still the same individual. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Mhm.
And when I say this, like I get into arguments with Christians, and they're like, "Oh, well, you got to understand that Muslims are good at debating. They're good apologists because they're taught from an early age." And I'm just like, "Oh man, this guy, we're not arguing. We're having like a great discussion." And I'm just saying, like, it's
Yeah.
amazing. It's
That
amazing. And
Yeah.
that's interesting
I'm
you
not
say
saying
that
I'm
because I mentioned
no,
that it was on the God Friday discussion. We had a Muslim and a Christian, and I was asked, well, did they argue? Did they get into fights? And I'm like, yeah, not really. It was pretty like they were pretty aligned on most things. I'd say you guys are probably more aligned than me with you guys. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
well, it's just crazy because this whole time I've kind of been not taught, but convinced, or not, whatever it is, but people have told you that me, Muslims are like completely different. Now, I would say like the things we are different on, yeah, it is like a huge dichotomy. It is very, very different. Like, what we
Mhm.
believe in, how to get to heaven, like for them, you'll go to hell, right? What they believe
Mhm.
in to get to heaven, for us, you'll go to hell. So it's like there's a huge difference. But
Yeah.
95% of the principles of the moral issues, the morality, it's there.
Mhm.
Like when I'm hearing them, I'm like,
Mhm.
that's exactly in alignment with Christian principle. Like that's in alignment with Christian principle, And
Mhm.
there's just a disconnect somewhere, right? And whatever that is, I don't, maybe we'll find it during this discussion. Who knows, man? But
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
whole point of it is like I'm fascinated with these discussions at the moment, and it's been helping me out with my spiritual walk. It's actually been giving me a lot of confirmation in things. And I don't know if this is going to disappoint. I don't know if this is going to disappoint Mohammad, but it's been making my walk in Christianity stronger. So
Yeah.
essentially, it's making me a better individual, which I think we can all agree on is a positive thing, regardless. And yeah, man, like just I'm really really liking these conversations, man.
Yeah. I mean, for me personally, my personal sort of perspective on Christianity is that I really don't have a problem with Christianity. Um, I would much, and I said this last time, I would much rather see a Christian world than a liberal feminist world because can fit in. My worldview can fit in, can work with Christianity, but it doesn't work with, you know, the other stuff, you know.
Yep.
So I
Yep.
mean, that's kind of my take is like what I would have liked to see from the world that used to be that once was a Christian world, because it would be easier for them to find salvation through Christianity because that's their common tradition, would be to start looking at that again, start returning to those values again, because as a Muslim, the value system is essentially the same. I mean, where Muslims and Christians agree, it's not because of the value system, it's the God concept is where they disagree, um, more than the lifestyle and the values and family life and all those things they have in common, you know.
One of the
And
things I really admire. Well, I was going to say the really thing I really admire about like the Muslim faith is like the devotion to it. Like, there's no. It really is to be. So my wife, she maybe watched this video on this, I guess Muslim that turned into a Christian, and basically what he said was when you're asking a Muslim to convert, you're asking a Muslim to give up his entire life. Like, his religion is not Muslims. Their religion is not like a Sunday activity. It is their entire life. Like everything revolves around that. Like, it's not. I'm a Muslim until it comes time to, hey man, I got these girls, like, and I'm not a Muslim anymore. Like, you know what I mean? No, it's everything you do revolves around it. So from my perspective, I think in that aspect, man, a lot of Christians can learn a lot from Muslims. Like, one of the things we mentioned in the chat the other day was pray continually.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, the
it
five times a
is
day thing.
he talks about how important it is for prayer, 5 times a day, irregardless, like every single day, it's 5 times a day, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you as a Christian, I don't do that, and I should. I need to do a lot better. Yeah, yeah. These are. I just can't emphasize how much I appreciate these conversations personally.
Mm-hmm.
Same here. Uh,
Yeah, that you know. Go ahead.
well, thank you guys for coming on every week. And Yassine, this is your second time, or Mohammed, this is your second time, but I appreciate your time because uh, all our time is very valuable. And you're like super. It's awesome to have you on because you know a lot about the Muslim Islam. So yeah, I'm just very grateful to have both of you on. And yeah, thanks for coming on.
Yeah. So, I mean, let me just give a quick summary of what we said, for the viewers. We've been talking about honesty and the importance of being honest, to be in alignment with yourself, first of all, being honest with yourself, um, as a way to grow as a human being, not only spiritually, but even when it comes to your goals in life, to be able to see your weaknesses and your flaws so that you can, try to reach as near human perfection as you can. So that requires honesty, but also to do other people the favor and be honest with them, you know, because we all have blind spots that we can't see, and also appreciate when people are being honest with us, because real friends are honest with each other so that they can actually help each other through life, instead of giving someone a false pat on the back, and saying, well, you did a good job, even though you know that, they totally suck, so they don't know they got to work harder, because, well, you never tell them that, you know people don't know how they are really being viewed in society, because you keep telling them they're awesome, but meanwhile everyone else is saying, oh no, they totally suck. So that's not a good thing. You're throwing somebody under the bus by being dishonest with them. So,
Hmm.
and then we also spoke about how that honesty is important for your relationship with God. Because at the end of the day, and Matt brought this up, you're going to stand in front of God, and you're not going to be able to lie. God knows you, you know? So, yeah. So I
Yeah,
don't know
man,
if there's
great.
any.
No, this was great, man. Let's decide on the topic for next week now, man. This was
Yeah, that sounds
or
good.
if we can't decide now, or if we can't
Yeah.
decide now, we can always put it in the chat. But like, if anybody has any ideas, you know, uh, the honesty was, I didn't expect this, the honesty one. I didn't, honestly, to be honest, the irony. When we brought it up, I was, this is probably gonna suck. Nah, this was good, man. This was good.
Yeah. Yeah.
You got anything? Any topic
Yeah.
wise, maybe?
Well, no, I think this was a really good talk. I think maybe I want to like spice it up and talk about the value of dishonesty, and
Mm.
because you can't have honesty without dishonesty, first of all. And then also sometimes in relationships it's actually better to be like, especially with the whole husband and wife thing. Like, it seems like the good relationships, the husband knows how to lie at the right times and the right amounts or something like that. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I would say,
Um.
I would say I'm a really bad person to ask at the moment about this, but I would say there's certain points where you don't. Yeah, you don't want to say the wrong thing, right? But you also don't want to be dishonest, right? And an example would be, does this dress make me look fat?
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
classic.
in my head, no, my wife's not fat, man. But like, if someone was to ask me that in my head, I'd be like, no, it's not the dress, it's you that looks fat, right? But there's certain ways that you can answer honestly, um, and still be in good grace with your wife. So sometimes being the blunt truth will get you in a lot of trouble, man. And I've learned that the hard way.
Yeah, the thing is, what I find, okay, I mean, people may not like what I'm gonna say, but um, women don't often approach the world in the same way that men do. Um, in that, for a woman, being able to fantasize and being able to dream is a very important component of her life and her happiness. And sometimes men, through their bluntness, they sort of crumble, they destroy that the dream, the fantasy of the thing, especially in marriage. And women don't enjoy that. They don't like you to destroy their fantasy that they were, because it gives them some sort of aspirations. They know that it's a fantasy, but they want it to, remain.
What's an
And I
example?
think as a man, you gotta kind of know that. Um, I don't know. I mean, because it could be anything really. It could be something she saw on television when she was a little girl, or read in a novel, or it could be anything really, um, but it makes her feel good to see that as a possibility, even if it's not gonna ever be a possibility. I'll give you an example. Like, let's say there's a woman from a really poor background and she watched an American movie where this family had a nice white picket fence and you know, a big home, and she's never going to own that home, and her husband is never really going to ever buy that for her. But she wants to believe that, But every time when he tells her, you know what, stop dreaming, you're never going to live in a house like that, she knows that, but she doesn't, that's not what she wants to hear. You understand? She
Hmm.
wants to have that fantasy in her mind and that vision of her family living in that house, even though that it's never going to happen. So I think that sometimes, I mean, what you're saying about dishonesty, um, I don't know how to put this politely, but
I don't like polite. Go
because
ahead,
women,
bring it out.
okay,
Yeah.
because women were basically evolved different to men. So when men were like through millions of years, needed to, for example, hunt, right, and do dangerous activities and fight wars, they needed to be brutally honest with each other because otherwise they couldn't win. So I couldn't tell, for example, Matt, just because he'll feel bad that I'm gonna not tell him that there's a lion around the corner. 'Cause that'll make him feel bad, right? I'm gonna have to tell him because otherwise he'll get eaten.
Yeah.
So what? Because that was the environment consistently for men, and because men had a proclivity to protect women because of the children, because they legacy and whatnot, parental investment, etc. So men used to, as a group, protect women and protect children. Um, Women, on the other hand, needed to keep things smooth at the camp, where the women are, and running smoothly. And because of that, they needed to prioritize how people feel. And in prioritizing how people feel, truth didn't matter. It was a different environment. Because to reduce conflict, how people feel matters a lot, you know? So, in order for to keep the tribe together and to keep everyone together and keep everyone feeling bad I mean, well, even in bad times, they had to lie constantly. And so women have a greater proclivity to lie, but they don't think it's lying. You understand? They're like,
Yep.
well, if I said that, he would have felt bad. Or, so they don't use words in the same way that we use words. We use words for practical concerns. They use words for emotional concerns. And so when you say that there's some value to dishonesty, when you take that whole picture I painted in front of you, there is some value to dishonesty. Um, but when it comes to a context that is not going to greatly disrupt your world, so it's usually trivialities that you can lie about. You don't have to be honest about it because it's not going to harm nobody. you know that's not a question of personal integrity. That's a question of household management, more than anything. So there is that sort of aspect. And I think, for me personally, what I do is, because I'm a terrible liar, and they'll know that I'm lying, right? So I don't lie, I just don't tell the whole truth. And usually, when I don't tell the whole truth, my family, they know I'm not telling the whole truth, but they won't push me on the issue because they'll also understand why I'm not telling the whole truth, you know? Because they know, okay, if he's going to tell the whole truth, it's going to upset everybody. They'll recognize that I'm not telling the whole truth, and they just won't push me on the issue. So that's
Hmm.
kind of how I do it, because I know that I'm going to forget what I told at another time, and then the story would be different, and then so I don't bother lying, because lying, I'm forgetful. It doesn't make sense for me to lie. Because then now you got to keep track of it, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I do it, but I don't know how other people do it. Yeah.
Great answers. Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that was a cool angle you put on how men would go out, they have to be honest to survive the lions and tigers and bears and stuff, and then the women to maintain a more stable home environment kind of have to be more emotionally aware. So maybe like the idea
Hmm.
of like not saying, "Hey, girl, you're picking up weight." It's like, "Oh no, you're very beautiful," because
Ah, you
it's like,
look good, girl. Yeah.
right, you look good. Yeah, it's to maintain that sort of relationship, and yeah, I think that's an interesting point. But then, so like I think it is like you got to use your discernment to figure out that balance, which can be tricky.
I mean, it's why I don't believe women should generally be in politics. I mean, I do understand there are exceptional women who carry a lot of masculine energy that do well in politics. But because when it comes to war and governance and big things, that thousands and hundreds of thousands of people get killed, you don't want to make decisions based on how people feel, because now you gotta the practical concerns of survival and society outweighs, um, you know. I think that's kind of why America is kind of upside down, because it's a gynocentric society and there's a lot of female representation, and so now what how people feel matters more than what's real. And while that, as a feminine energy, does have a place in the world, it is important, but it has to always be subverted, slightly tilted, um, under masculine uh, energy, you know?
I
So
can
it's
see
not
that.
that I'm not saying like feminine energy has to be all the way down here and the man is all the way up here. No, I'm saying it works together, but it needs to be balanced,
Yeah. Yeah, it's like
you
a
know,
balance
in
of
order for
pathos and
society.
ethos, or sorry, logos and pathos or whatever.
Mhm.
So these are Greek words. What does that mean? What are those words?
Logos is like logical, logic ability. Pathos is emotional ability, and ethos is ethical. And like we learned it in English, and it's kind of like you kind of advertising that kind of use different elements of logos, pathos, and ethos to convince you about something or to influence you. So I think, yeah, if there's more women, now that there's more women voting, the pathos influence becomes stronger. So we're actually able to get influence as a country or something more from emotional uh, arguments rather than ethical or logical arguments.
Exactly. And
No, it's
so
good
that's kind of
information.
what I think that has led to, or is leading to, the downturn in the society, the downward spiral, because you do need some underpinning, cultural or ethical or religious, to any society. You need something that holds the society together. Otherwise, it'll just disintegrate, you know? And in America, that used to be Christianity, um, which is why I think Christianity is good for America, even though I'm not a Christian, because that is the cultural heritage of the country. That's where the country comes from. As a Muslim, for me to sit here and say, "Oh, America should be Islamic," I mean, that would be wonderful. But the point
Mhm.
is, that's not realistic. Um, for as a country, that's not a realistic proposition. You know what I mean? But for the country to flourish, I can see the value in having a Christian ethos. Yeah,
Yeah,
because that's essentially what you need. That's what America needs.
yeah, an Orthodox Christian ethos, I guess, would be the word, right?
Yeah,
Like
I
not
would just
this.
say a real Christianity, not
Yes,
this liberal.
yeah, not
Uh,
the neo Christians we call them. That well, I feel. Well, if we went by what specifically me, if we went by everything
mm,
I feel, yeah, that's where I'd be jacked up. I'm telling you.
mm.
I told you sometimes I feel like punching somebody in the face. Jesus said, "Turn the other cheek," and it's hard sometimes. It's hard to turn that other cheek.
Yeah. I think like the seeking God is definitely a key component that we're losing in I guess maybe worldwide. I don't know if it's just America, but I think um that seeking of God is moving forward. Like we're gonna need to do more of that to be successful. Um, because if we like let our like science I would say also is kind of in the realm of seeking God, but it also is very mental. So it's like a lot of logic and stuff goes into that. But then if you look at like some of the greatest scientists, they were believers in God and stuff like that. So
Mhm, mhm,
um,
mhm.
yeah, I think seeking God through religion or however, whatever means that you can, um, yeah, I think that's going to be very valuable moving forward.
Yeah, I think you're right, because seeking God is one way to offset hedonism and materialism. And one of the downward spirals in the world, essentially, is actually materialism, wanting more and more, and to become more and more comfortable, and there's just no end to it. And what we have done essentially is, we've created an unsustainable world. We've created a status quo that we can't sustain. A lot of the wars and a lot of the uh, uh, crazy geopolitical situations that we find ourselves in is because of greed. And the reason why there is that level of greed is because we know that we need to sustain a lifestyle that isn't sustainable in the long run. I mean, most of us have things we don't need, but we think we need it.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Yes. You're right. You're right.
Mhm.
I would here in the states, particularly, people convince themselves they need that 6 bedroom house. Just had this conversation with a guy I share an office with at work. It was common, probably in 1950s, even earlier, that You raised, 10 people under a 2 bedroom house, you
Mm-hmm.
know,
Mm-hmm.
and we convince ourselves that everybody needs their own room. Then what happens is you got people that don't ever interact. This person's
Mm-hmm.
always in their own space. This person's always in their own space. Not that going to your own space isn't like something we shouldn't do, but like not all the time. You need to have
Mm-hmm.
those. I can recall as a child for a brief moment at least, having sitting down as a family and watching. Actually, back then it was in living color. I don't know if you know what that is, man. In living color. Am I,
No,
am I
I
right
Heard
don't
of
on?
know.
it, but I can't
Yeah,
remember what it
you're
is.
not. Yeah, you're not from the states. I wouldn't expect you to know Mohammed, but like, yeah, Raj is a little. He's a little younger, but yeah, Living Color
Yeah.
was like the the Wayans brothers. It was like their version of like Saturday Night Live. Like it was just
Oh,
like
okay. Mm-hmm.
yeah, like Mad TV or whatever the other ones were. But it was very very popular. That's actually where Jennifer Lopez originated from, the Living Color.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, sitting down and watching that as a family, like just having those moments where you're actually like doing something, having family dinner, like people don't even do that anymore, right? Um, yeah. So we convince ourselves we need a lot of things, and we don't. Like I mentioned earlier, if we're being honest with ourselves, which is ironically what this whole conversation was about. The only thing we actually need is God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think that when people reconnect with living their lives in a more godly way, and finding fulfillment through prayer and through connecting with God, they won't be so materialistic, and they won't see the need to try to outcompete each other and fight for these things, because essentially that's what the fight is about always. Really, we're fighting for things,
Yeah, it's kind of the
who gets the
idea of
most.
filling that void through the external, but when you seek God, you
Hmm.
don't that void is you're good with that void. It's essentially filled with God or something.
Hmm. There's a story that we are taught, the companions of the Prophet Muhammad. They were traveling through the desert, and they had this one bottle of water, and they were all thirsty, so they sat down. Um, and so the guy opens the bottle of water, but he doesn't want to drink first. So he gives it to the guy next to him. The guy next to him doesn't want to drink ahead of the guy next to him, you know? So they keep passing the bottle around, and eventually they all die because nobody wanted to put himself ahead of his brother because there was only that little bit of water in there, you know? Um, and I think the moral of the story is when you reach that level of humanity that you place relationships first, brotherhood first over things, then the world can be a much better place. But now we value things over relationships and over people.
Wait, I
you
don't
know
understand
I
because
mean, I
like
see it.
in that story everyone died. Isn't that bad? Like isn't that saying like you should put yourself
I
a
mean,
little
yeah.
first so you drink a little water or
Yeah,
what?
Let me take a stab at this. Let me take a stab at this. So, like, I think, I think it's basically they valued each other more than they valued actual. Nah, I can't do it, bro. I'm honest, man. I'm kind of lost too, bro. I thought I had a good thought. I don't have one.
yeah. No, they nobody was prepared to put his own life ahead of the life of the other person. Because
Yeah.
in the desert is critical, and the water is critical. You're gonna die. You understand? But nobody
Hmm.
was prepared to say, "Listen, let me live and let these other people die." So nobody wanted to be the only person to drink. You understand?
Got you. Oh, so I got you. So it was a selfless act because they knew that there wasn't enough for everybody. That other people were going to die. So
Yes.
got you. Yep,
So which guy
I
is
get
now
it.
prepared to choose himself over his
Nobody.
friends? So that's kind of
Yep.
kind of what happened there.
But then everyone
Yeah.
Yeah.
dies. So like but if someone drank, then someone would survive and maybe live to see another day, right?
Well,
Yeah.
somebody had to. Well, the last person to die had to have lived, otherwise that story wouldn't have been told. Like, you know what I mean?
Exactly. That's true. That's true. That's a good one. Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
That's true. But anyway, the point is like you see people like they can prioritize their jobs, for example, and they know how to be committed to their jobs and they know how to be loyal to their jobs, but they can't be committed in a relationship, loyal to their husband or wife, for example. You
damn,
understand?
damn.
So, I mean, so this is how the priorities are skewed essentially, you know, because people are less significant and relationships are more utilitarian in our time, um situationships, because we value things more, you know. So
Definitely.
you work for 20 years at one company because the company is treating you well, but you'll go through 15 different relationships, situationships,
Relationships.
and you understand, and this in the same
Yes.
your intimate relationships will keep changing consistently, but you'll stick to one job because you can understand why it's important to stick to one job and be committed in order to become successful from a materialistic standpoint, but you can't understand why it would be important to be committed from a relationship standpoint.
Mm,
Mm.
So
man,
that's
that's hitting
kind
it
of,
home for yes,
yeah.
yes. You're 100% right. I've seen it over and over, a lot of different situations where people work their way up the ladder, got really high in the success totem pole, we call it, and lost their family, lost their wives in the process because that's what they valued more was the actual success versus the marriage and the family, and the priorities were obviously skewed, right? But yeah, you're 100% right, man. I'll be, if I'm being honest with myself, you're kind of talking about me to an extent. I could be great at my job. I could be loyal to my job. I could, never show up late. Uh, well, let's not say never show up late. I have done that, but never call off. Ever like never really
Mm.
call off. Only time I call off, I got to be like really, really. I mean, I went to work with COVID. I went to work with uh, mono, like you name it. I showed up to work, but being great at that like didn't transfer over to being like a great.
Your mic went off. Oh, there
Oh,
we go.
can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah.
Sorry, where'd you lose me at?
You said
Great.
being great at that.
Yeah, being great at like this aspect didn't transfer over to being great in the home. So, yep, you stabbed me in the side there, man, but it was good. A good stab, man.
I didn't mean
Good stuff.
that.
No, 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 good
Is
stab,
that
man. It was
I
good.
have
man
powers of
honesty
prediction,
right there?
so yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. So
I
yeah, so
think
that's kind of, I think we leave it off there, Yash.
yeah.
I gotta go actually. Yeah.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's perfect.
So
All right, let's end it with the
all right.
prayer. Who wants to do the prayer today?
Let Matt do it this time, yeah?
All right, go for it, Matt. Are you able to do it? Your
All
mic's muted.
All right, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. All right. All right. God, the Father, the Creator, the holiest of holy. Thank you for this moment of allowing me to cross paths with these two men here. This is what I needed, what I've been calling you for. The irony is who it was, how I met Raj, and what it's led to, what it's escalated to, and where it's leading. Uh, Thank you for the moments of clarity. Thank you for the discussions we're having here, the civil discussions in honor of you. And bless Raj, bless Mohammad, bless their finances, bless their families, bless their health. Uh, that's it. And amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Amen.
See
Sorry
you
about
later.
that.
All right, keep well.
All right, guys.
Peace.
Bye.